Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. For this tutorial, I'm going to show you how I did this two-tone piped buttercream technique with some scrolly pattern highlights and the floral placement around the center. I was really inspired by the moody colors of a display that I saw in Michael's craft store with these moody, dark, rich colors. So I wanted to use them in a design, and I wanted to include the floral, and this is how I did it. I decided to use this is actually an edible lace mat that I have to do the wavy pattern around. I don't know what else to call it. It's not quite scrolly, but it's intricate. Anyway, so what I'm doing is I'm just marking the high points of that pattern all the way around the cake, and that's marking it with my toothpicks, and that's how I'm gonna know, have a better idea, a good idea of how to do my piping to get it lined up to work underneath that pattern. So the cake is already crumb coated. This is one of my very much used and loved cakes. This was edible at one point, but I wouldn't suggest it now. It's for demonstration purposes only. So I'm just using my Crusting American buttercream, and I added black to it. I have videos showing how I get my deep colors in my buttercream. And so basically, if you don't want to watch the other videos, I would suggest. But if you don't want to, I just basically add some food coloring, put it in either the microwave until it becomes liquid, and that intensifies the color, or you can put it into your food processor, and the mixing of it in the food processor brings out the richer color also. I like the food processor technique because it doesn't change the consistency of the buttercream. Sometimes in the microwave, it can kind of bring out the granulation of the sugar in the buttercream. Anyway, there's my 2 cents worth on there. So I piped it on there, smoothed it out, and I put both those tiers into the freezer to set up while I make my fondant pattern. The reason I wanted to do that is because to do the second color, it's easier if your first color is already set up and chilled. So I just rolled out my fondant to about 1/4 inch thickness, and I used my mat with some cornstarch in the mat so it doesn't stick, and just press down until you can kind of feel where you're getting all those details. You can kind of feel it through the fondant with your fingers. That's why I like to use my fingers, so I know I haven't missed any of the details. So now I just set those pieces aside, and I am kind of cleaning up the edges of the black buttercream. I wasn't sure. I personally I'm really nitpicky, and I want to make sure there's clean edges everywhere. So I just cleaned those up. I suppose you probably don't have to do that step. I have to sleep at night, so I have to make sure I get it as clean as possible. And then I went in with my burgundy color, and I achieved the burgundy with the same technique. This is just the burgundy food coloring by, who is it by? I think it's by the Hobby Lobby brand of food coloring. Their food coloring is pretty good, and it's gel food coloring. You could use AmeriColor burgundy. It would do the same thing. Any gel food coloring would work. So I just, so you can see now that the black buttercream has set up and is firm, I'm able to scrape down the burgundy without affecting the bottom color or the top, without affecting the dark color, the black color. And then I was just blotting off some of the condensation that you sometimes get when you bring your cake out from the freezer. Well, okay, you always do. Let's be honest. So it's good to just blot it with a paper towel. You wouldn't be able to blot the burgundy because it is fresh and not set up. But it should not be having any condensation anyway, since it was just applied. And now I'm just cutting out the pattern on my fondant. Setting it aside to let it firm up for a little bit makes it easier to cut out. Your X-Acto knife doesn't drag and pull if it has a little time to firm up. I also like to dip the tip of my X-Acto knife into shortening. That helps it glide through also. And I'm just taking my time to cut just the outside pattern. And I made multiple pieces, but you don't need to see me cutting out all of them. I showed you how I did 2 of them here, and I just placed them inside folded up pieces of parchment paper until I was ready to attach them. That's over on the side. I'm trying to think how many I actually made. How many pieces? I think I made 4, but technically I only used 3 of these because for the back of some of the tiers, I had to kind of piece it together so that it looked like still a waving the pattern, but to get them to fit because they didn't wrap around perfectly. They never do. That never happens. So if you have to piece it together, it's fine. Just make sure that your solid piece though is in the front. Does that make sense? So that you see the most attractive part of that piece of fondant in the very front. And there I'm just putting it in my parchment paper, covering it up with saran wrap. But I did go right back in and attach it, so that was kind of pointless. But if you had something else you needed to do in the meantime, just covering it up keeps it still pliable so you can wrap it around your tier without it cracking. And right here, I did not need to add anything to the fondant because there was a little bit of condensation. It was a really humid day, so I had more condensation than normal coming through my buttercream. It does happen to me too, guys. So I didn't really have to add anything to the back of the fondant because I would normally at this point just add some water, a little bit of water on the back of it, or some buttercream to attach it, but I didn't need to. But that's what you could do, is a little piping gel, some water, or a little bit of buttercream behind your fondant pieces. Any of those techniques would work. Now I'm making those pieces, the trim pieces for the top and the bottom. This is just a mold that I have, silicone mold, dusted with cornstarch. There's multiple different patterns I could have chose or picked from, but I decided I liked that piece the best. It just is what appealed to me. So I just like to push it in with my fingers, and then sometimes I use the rolling pin to make sure that it gets in there, and then use the palm of your hand to really push it in there. You can use a straight edge blade to remove the excess, and sometimes I will go in and kind of pinch it towards the middle. Right there. No, I don't think I am. I think I'm just smoothing the edges there. But sometimes I'll pinch it towards the middle and then cut that off with scissors. And then it's pretty easy to release them just by pulling the edges of the silicone mat. There, I'm doing what I was talking about. Down, and it kind of releases the edges. And then you can easily take your piece of fondant out. And I did 3, maybe 6 pieces is what I needed to cover the top and the bottom. There, I'm just removing the excess with a straight blade. Be careful when you're doing that. You don't want to cut your mold. You can cut it if you press too hard. And these, again, I did not have to add anything behind them, I don't believe. I lied. The bottom, I did add some water. Okay, so there was a little water involved. As I'm saying it, I'm thinking, didn't I? I think I did have to at some point, but that's where it was, at the bottom. And I'm just using my palette knife just to push it down so that it's even all the way around the bottom. And then if you have a little piece where, a little section that's not the same size as a piece of your trim that you've already cut out, just cut it down. Again, always start your details in the front or wrap around the back, because if there's going to be an uneven spot or a spot that doesn't match up perfectly, have it be in the back. Or if you're going to have some decorations that can hide it, do it there. And yes, normally you would put some straws on the bottom. I would put 4 straws to support the top tier. But since this cake is nice and firm, and I don't need to put straws in it anymore, but you would, on a cake for an order, need to add some straws for support. And then add a little buttercream in between the tiers. And then I did my caulking method around the edge. And now I'm just using a combination of the luster dust, gold luster dust, and Everclear. Made a paint out of it. And I'm just brushing the high points of the pattern. I just love how that just brings out all the detail. Like if you want the look of lace, or to use one of your lace mats, but you don't want to actually make the edible lace, this is a really good way to use it because it gives you basically the same effect. It does have some more thickness to it than the edible lace would, but that's okay. And here I left this in because this is how I clean up. If I have some gold or any kind of a paint that is not where I want it, I just use a Q-tip dipped in the Everclear and I just clean it up. Kind of like if you're a girl and you're doing mascara and you accidentally get it on your eyelid, you let it dry and then you wet it down with wet down the Q-tip and wipe it away. If you're a girl, you know what I'm saying. Or anybody that wears makeup. So now I'm just attaching the flowers. If this was for an order, I would wrap those stems with some floral tape and make sure that those are nice and food safe before you insert them into the cake. I did use a little buttercream here and there to attach the ones that had shorter stems. These are silk flowers. Guys, silk flowers are so much better than they used to be. Don't be afraid to do silk flowers. Now, you're not necessarily going to save any money, but you're going to save yourself the time of making edible flowers. So there it is, all done. I absolutely love this. Would be a good fall Halloween vibe kind of cake. I hope you learned something. I hope you got something from it. As always, I appreciate you watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.